What's up, everybody? Stacking Surfer here. Today I'm going to go by Jared. Anyway, you guys know my first name already, so I have to do a different intro. I'll have to come up with a different one. But we've got everybody's favorite stacker here with us, Andy Schectman.
Thank you, brother.
So, Andy, I'm glad that you're here with us. And
good to be
this
back.
is an awesome day. I don't know if you've seen the price of silver. I'm guessing you have already.
Looks like it's up 97 cents on the futures. So, yeah, I have.
So silver's jumping. We have a lot of news just over the weekend with Israel and Iran.
Yes.
I'm even hearing other things about the brics going on. So it seems like we're, when I first had you on, you talked about little by little by little, and then all of a sudden, right? So we're not quite at the all of a sudden yet, but I think we're getting closer to whatever that moment might be. And it feels like it keeps ticking closer and closer to it.
I would agree. Very much so. In multiple ways, geopolitically, politically, socially, morally, economically. You look at the stuff that you see happening, the whitewashing of the attempt to whitewash our culture. Give you an example what I mean by that. It's like you can't even make some of this stuff up, and this is the stuff that I really rallied against over the last couple of years. But like, for example, this is in your home state, talking about an ABC journalist named Jory Rand. And Jory, live on TV, is talking about what's going on in LA. And he says, noting that there was a large group of people running wild, Rand said, it could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there the wrong way. He's talking about Trump wanting to bring in the National Guard to quell the rioting, which was supposedly peaceful, but we all know it wasn't, because as Jory says, it could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators. I mean, come on, man. Like, I don't know about you, but that's what I did when I was a kid. We would set cars on fire in Minneapolis and watch them burn. I mean, that was a Friday night, right? And that's the kind of way that they frame these things, or the mainstream media talking so much about what a tragedy it was that they identified U.S. aid and globally, and we're hurting so many people, and and it's the worst thing ever, and how dare they? But we just find out, and where's the media talking about the fact that 4 individuals, a USA contracting officer plus 3 corporate executives, pled guilty on June 12th for their roles in a decade-long bribery and fraud scheme they pled guilty to the Justice Department. At least 14 government contracts worth a combined total of more than $550 million in federal funds. Where do you think all that money went? So when we talk about the things that are happening, it's everywhere. And it's the media, it's the government, it's the political scene, it's the geopolitical scene, it's the left versus right, the red versus blue, the black versus white, the rich versus poor, the vaccine versus no vaccine. I mean, go on and on and on. These are the things that drive me insane, but these are all part of the same, little by little, the chipping away, if you will, at the fabric of what it means to be an American and what it means to be in this country. And you can look at it in a different way, and stop me anytime if you have questions. But I find it interesting that when we talk about the markets, right? Mm-hmm. Investors right now, mom and pop, are now all in on stocks. And in fact, let me give you some exact numbers here, which I find to be interesting. So the institutional investors have been selling stocks almost every week since 2025. Those would be the very, very wise hedge funds and big money investors. As an example, if you look at, let me give you their names just as an example. What are their names? I read this just the other day. I'll make my point, but I just want to give you the names of these 2 guys. They're the second and third largest shareholders in NVIDIA. They're board members. What are their names? Their names are, and if I can't find it, I can't find it. 1 second. Sorry, everybody. Doesn't matter. I can't find it. Well, the second and third largest investors in Nvidia just dumped 194 billion worth of million worth of stocks last week at the same time. Their board members, they dump, but keep that in mind. So institutional investors have been dumping stocks every week in 2025. Since the first week of June, professional investors have sold 4.2 billion in equities. The 4-week moving average of selling is 2 billion per week. So you have insiders dumping stocks. At the same time, the U.S. households through mutual funds and pension funds, their financial allocation to stocks hit a record 53%. It's larger than the dot-com bubble, which was 51. It's the largest allocation by the retail public to equities ever. And so when you talk about insiders, people in the know, dumping, and the public running in, what could possibly go wrong? Now let's look at it in terms of precious metals. Same thing is happening in reverse. You've had the largest deliveries in the history of the COMEX, month over month over month over month. The May contract was the largest delivery ever in the history of COMEX in both gold and silver. These are the very knowledgeable investors. They're the wealthy ones, but they're the ones closest to the information. Who is taking possession, for example, of 8.5 billion worth of gold in May, 5 billion nearly in March? Who's standing for delivery on all this? The largest silver delivery ever in the history of the COMEX. At the same time, I've been saying on all the shows I'm on, where's the public buying metals? They have gone headlong again, as this statistic is telling you, into the risk on trade again. The 7 stocks, they've run back into them at the same time as the insiders are running the other way, waving at them. Thank you for taking my shares. Goodbye, and run out the door. So the insiders are selling equities and buying commodities and standing for delivery, as the public has shed commodities and is running headlong into the burning fire that is the equity market. Now, what could possibly go wrong there? This, again, will just foment the divisiveness that this country has been engulfed in over the last 4 years, and it's not a good thing. Really isn't. And I think it will only get better, or worse, rather. This divisiveness will only get worse. And you know, the people like me and you who have been mocked as crazy for owning gold for all of these years, it's now become the second largest world reserve asset, surpassing the euro at the central bank level. The smart money, the big money, the money that's closest to the information is now accumulating gold at a level no one has ever seen before. And the interesting part is removing counterparty risk, whether it be standing for delivery off of COMEX or the LBMA, getting it off the exchanges, or the 40 central banks that have requested delivery from the New York Fed or the Bank of England, the traditional safe havens that gave access to the LBMA and the COMEX, or in this case, you know, the opposite in the equity market, selling as the public is buying. Public's nowhere to be seen in the retail market in metals. It's the ultimate contrarian indicator. So yeah, I think things are about to get very interesting, and the war is a sideshow to me. I think the war is over. I truly do. I've been following it very closely. The Iranian ability to do anything at this point has been neutered. There's a wonderful station called Tusi TV, Tousi, I believe, who has done an amazing job of showing what's been happening step by step by step by step. But I think it'll be over very soon. I do. Hopefully, there's no more bloodshed. But you know, again, you see war in the Middle East, you see war in the Ukraine, you see craziness. You see, you know, mixed feelings on both. And again, just more and more divisiveness. So the guys' name are Mark Stevens and Tench Coates, second and third largest individual shareholders and board members, dumped a combined 194 million worth of Nvidia shares at the same time. Anyways, so yeah, this is a situation where things are getting nuts. You look at the Treasury market. The U.S. Treasury bought back another 10 billion of its own debt, matching its largest Treasury buyback in history, which was done 2 weeks ago. So they're buying back 10 billion of its own debt, long-term duration debt, and they do that by selling short-term to finance the buyback of long-term, because there's no demand for the long-term. It's the same reason the Fed had to come in 3 weeks ago and buy $50 billion nearly of a sampling of 3, 10, and 30-year treasuries. There's no demand. They're trying really hard to not let interest rates spike. But, that's what we see happening. That's a loss of confidence. Who the hell wants to buy our treasuries? We're inflating away our problems. We want to raise the debt ceiling. We have another $2.5 trillion on this year's deficit, and yet this comes in the face of Doge, where $900 billion was saved. Right, that's what they saved.
Yep.
That's 37 hours worth of government spending. That's it. So the whole thing is crazy. And only getting worse. So,
well, and to your point, Andy, and this is what I love about the little by little. It's not one thing. It's almost like a feeling that's in the air, that's out there, that people are starting to kind of get it. I just saw a short from Michael Saylor and Natalie Brunell.
Where I've had Natalie on my show twice, and she's a smart lady.
She is, and they're both very smart people. And the question that was being asked is, why is Bitcoin not at $200,000 yet? And there's a bit to the answer there, but the basis of it is people are moving into other things as well. So it's not just Now
let me stop you for 1 second. Remember your thought. Don't lose your thought. Yep. Who's moving? Is it the same thing we're seeing here? Is it the insiders are leaving, the people who've been in since early, and they're selling to, just like the mom and pop who's running in, the FOMO? Are they running in and taking the shares or the coins of those that have already made enough to change future generations' lives? That would be my question.
Yes and no. So it's the institutions. So a lot of governments have been left with Bitcoin probably seized. You've got other large organizations that collapsed, like FTX, that had a big settlement. And then you have Mt. Gox, which is the biggest one, and they had these coins tied up for a very long time. So it's not that people are giving up on Bitcoin. It's not that people are giving up on stocks necessarily either. I think what it is some of these large holders are diversifying their funds, especially even more so with Bitcoin, where they're going into a few other things. Now, I don't know that he understands exactly where it's going, or she does either. And it's not to say Bitcoin's not going to go higher, or it's a bad asset. I know some people in the chat, really hate cryptos, but the reality is that people are moving things around to what they perceive to be a little safer. And so, we see silver today hit over $37. It hasn't done that for years. And this is happening when we have talks about an economy having problems, which, we have a 45-year cup and handle that's going on. So it's already broken out of that. And it looks like it's going to continue that range up. But it's also a curious thing. We had one of the questions that came up here, Andy, that I think is really relevant to this, of what we're talking about too, is this one here from Mr. and Mrs. West Texas Stacker. Andy, do you think all of the 500-ounce missiles being launched is why the silver price is going up?
No,
so,
I don't.
So
I think the reason that it's going up is that there's more demand than there is supply. But I would say that if you go back to Wednesday, the silver market traded 487 million ounces of paper silver. And then on Friday, 356 million ounces. This is all done to hold the price below 37. And it's the second largest short position by the commercial banks. These are the ones that are financing the companies like BlackRock, the ones that own all of the military contracting companies that are making the high-tech weapons. You have the second largest short position in the history of the COMEX market ever in silver right now.
Yeah, it's huge.
And it's still going up. What does that say to you about the strength? They are being challenged by the biggest money in the world, by the Indians, by the Russians, by the Saudis, by the Chinese. Their sovereign wealth funds are saying, nah, it's okay. We'll stand for delivery. We don't care if we have 12 margin calls. We're going to stand for delivery. We have more money than you do. We're going to stand for delivery. That is the difference. So you have, let me just see if I can give you some even more crazy numbers. I think I can. I might not. What is the total number of ounces that are? The short position is like 900 million ounces, some ridiculous amount.
Yeah, it fluctuates. It's been really close to 1 billion.
Yeah, and so you have, and how much of that is naked, And so let's take a step back and look at what the ECB, the European Central Bank, just said publicly last month. The ECB warned of increasing counterparty risk in gold derivatives for the euro area. In the May edition of the Financial Stability Review, the ECB added that a significant share of these gold derivatives, and you can add silver into that too, were over the counter and not centrally cleared. That means they were traded in London and not traded and COMEX, which is centrally cleared. The over the counter would be the way that the LBMA is. It's an over the counter market, peer to peer in essence. There's no central clearing authority like there is at COMEX. The big point to take on board is an official recognition that stand for delivery obligations on COMEX are behind the crisis. They continue since November. Warehouse stock, nadir 26,470,000 ounces have stood for delivery in gold. Eurozone banks have swapped their gold for paper, and the gold is disappearing in deliveries. Behind the ECB's public concern is a far deeper one. It is as close as we can get to an official warning that the gold paper game is coming to a very nasty end, likely to drive gold measured in paper currencies far, far higher. Incidentally, the same problem exists in silver without central bank participation. So this is exactly what you have. You have a situation where forever these banks, these exchanges in the West and the banks that traded on them were able to hold down the paper price because no one stood for delivery. Nobody did, less than 1%. And now all of a sudden, whether it be in London, even in Shanghai, and in the United States off of COMEX, the deliveries are exceedingly massive. And these people are freaking the hell out, totally freaking out.
Andy,
China has been
what happens if that cannot be fulfilled anymore?
Then you get a delivery failure and a run on the exchanges. It's the same thing if your bank says we don't have any money for you, and that gets out on the 6 o'clock news. First thing tomorrow morning, everyone's going to be at the door. Give me my damn money. And it's the same thing here. I don't know. I think that it's very interesting. I'm going to share my screen for 1 second. I got this really cool chart. Let me see if I can do this. Hang on. How do I do this?
But I think it's a great point, Andy. It's, the price of silver is not just going up because there's wars going on. We have a huge amount of demand, industrial. We have a demand for monetarily all over the place. India's buying a ton. China's buying a ton. And it just happens to be coinciding with these other events, guys. So, we could see even more demand start to creep up as well.
Can you see that?
Yes. Let me add it to the stage here for us.
I don't know. You tell me. These are the notes that I take during the week. And I always try to give credit to the people who put it up. I don't know who @ColdJames73 is, but if this is really true, which I have no reason to believe it's not, from the dailygold.com, we are 3 days away from a turning point, according to the last several bull markets in gold. You can see that on June 20th, things began to accelerate. Now, I don't know what the hell June 20th means, but each historical comp surge higher after June 20th. So little food for thought there for people who are thinking about gold and silver, that we're right there. We're right at the pivot point. And it's interesting when you talk about people who don't quite understand what the power that gold has. I've been buying it gold and silver every 2 weeks for 35 years. I get it. People don't. Let me explain to you what I mean. Everyone is so fixated on price, right? Need to make a return on your investment. It needs to charge interest. Bullshit, it does. In January, today, right now,
Yep.
Today, if you call the average price of a house is 416,900, and we have gold right now at, call it 30. Let's just call it 3,400. It's 3,390. We'll call it 3,400 for the sake of math. So if we take 416,900, and we divide it by 3,400, it's 122.6 coins to buy a house. In 2000, when gold was $252 an ounce, or even $274.50, it was $252 in 2002. But let's just go to the beginning of the century. $274.50 was the price in January, I believe January 1st, or in early January. So if we take those same 122 ounces times 274.50, you get 33,489. So 25 years ago, those 122 ounces were $33,500. Today, it's 417,000, and it's earned nothing but dust for 25 years. It's outperformed almost every asset class while removing all counterparty risk in your possession. And I would say to young people out there that the same opportunity exists in silver right now. A few 1,000 ounces of silver in 20 years may buy you a house. That's no more crazy than saying the same thing about gold 25 years ago. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned there. When we see the largest delivery in the history of the COMEX market ever happen in the May contract, but massive deliveries happening every month over month over month, and China, the second largest producer in the world, flying throughout Latin America, buying concentrate and doré from the miners directly, shipping it back to China and refining it because they want it so bad, as the second largest producer in the world. What does it tell you about the value of silver? Why are they holding it down so much? Because it is not an industrial metal. Sure it is, but it is far more strategic than it is industrial, as it is disappearing in nature because it's used in industrial applications like bombs or solar panels, or the computer you're talking to me on has probably a fifth of an ounce of silver. Now, does it make sense to smash that computer apart and pull out a fifth of an ounce of silver to recycle it? $6 worth of silver, it's not even worth the manpower to do it. So, the point of it is that silver, all the silver used in industry is gone. It's a depleting asset. And if it weren't for the Western central banks who have been holding it down, the price would be much higher. Now, what you're seeing are exchanges popping up. A new one is coming in Singapore. We've seen the Shanghai Metals and the Shanghai Futures Exchange cumulatively have greater volume than that of the COMEX. You're seeing the BRICS exchange that is coming, with the Moscow exchange. The exchange in Dubai is getting far more volume. These countries are accumulating and possessing all of the world's commodities, and they are more interested in being able to set the price and taking that away from the West than anything. This is about breaking free from the Western suppression. This Western rules-based system has benefited us, and all of the world's commodities valued in dollars has given us a huge advantage. Now these countries are saying, screw it. And I always say, it's the comment that the guy that's developing the BRICS grain exchange said: we produce more and consume more grain than they do in the West, but we can't control the price. It's done on COMEX. With the development of the BRICS grain exchange, that will change. Do you think they don't know that about all of the world's commodities? They're just not saying it. And that's why you're seeing these deliveries. They're challenging the West. It's accelerating. No, we'll stand for delivery. Thank you. Give me it. Month over month over month over month. And someone got to Trump and said, if you don't fucking do this, we're done. You got to do this right now. You need to stand for delivery right now, or we're done. And thankfully, someone got to the Trump administration. So these deliveries, in my mind, are the Treasury or the Federal Reserve, probably the Treasury, that is standing for delivery in huge amounts, because it is an existential threat to the sovereignty and to the future of this country. And when you see President Trump on Easter Sunday say, he who has the gold makes the rules, thank you very much. What the hell does that mean? Where does that come from? You never heard Biden utter anything coherent or anything even remotely close to something like that. And when you see the Treasury Secretary Bessent say there will be a new Bretton Woods monetary system within this administration, what the hell does that mean? All of these clues that are being dropped, the crumbs, you can put them together and choose not to see where it's leading, or you can trust the clues and go with it, because that's the all at once moment. We're seeing the little by little by little by little. Neither you trust it or you don't. That's your prerogative. I believe that we are transitioning into a new monetary system, one that where gold will have a central role. It will be tied to a new system, either the way Judy Shelton says, through the Treasury market, or something more ambitious like the way the BRICS are doing it, over Enbridge, settling in gold. And you can see that too, because the Shanghai Metals Exchange is opening up and building new exchanges to internationalize their reach. They're doing them in Africa, they're doing them in Asia, they're starting in Saudi Arabia and in Hong Kong. And the idea is to trade local currencies, CBDCs, over the bridge network, which is 98% less costly than the SWIFT network, and clears in 7 seconds instead of 3 days. They can do that, and then settle imbalances, either currency imbalances or trade imbalances, with gold. But by putting the metals exchanges in all of these other jurisdictions, it's better than just having it held in one jurisdiction, and that inspires more confidence. So you can see it everywhere. They're going to have a settlement system tied to gold, maybe ultimately a common currency, but that's in the future. A settlement system tied to gold, and maybe we're going to have a treasury system tied to gold. But whatever it is, I believe that's where we are heading, into a new system that is not about promises from a broke country. Take our treasuries and promise they're good, versus holding gold in your own possession, which has doubled its performance, that being of the treasury market, the 10-year, since 2000, with no counterparty risk. Just look at last year, was up 40%, gold was, and the treasury was up 4%. Look at this year, a 10-year treasury 6 months through the year have netted you 2%, and at the same time the dollar's down 10, gold's up 35. So you can see that this is something that is accelerating in terms of its performance, in terms of its demand. And net since 2014, Jared, there has been no new central bank buying of our treasuries. It's waning. So there are a lot of things happening all at once, and either you get it or you don't. So you don't buy gold to get wealthy. You buy gold to get the hell out of the way of what's coming.
I agree. And this goes kind of along with this question here. I think there's a high probability that Trump has mentioned we're going into a golden age. He's mentioned he who has the gold makes the rules. There's way too many hints being dropped about gold for there not to be. Even his son mentioned it. So I think it's coming. And my bet is probably on not a CBDC. It'll be a stable coin from the Treasury that'll probably be backed by gold. And I'm guessing we're waiting to kind of see what the BRICS do, is my guess. And I just don't know what's going to happen and how fast it's going to happen. But it feels like we're waiting for something, and maybe we need more gold to come back into the country first. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. And that's kind of why I think they've been quiet about gold since they talked about it a lot at the beginning. when Bessent said we're going to monetize the balance sheet. Well, what else can you monetize beside gold? And then he said, well, we're not going to revalue. But I think Trump or someone said, what the fuck did you say that for, dummy? We don't want him to know that yet. Exactly. Would be my guess. But when I interviewed Judy, she said, Andy, Trump told me on July 4th, 2026, the 250th year anniversary of the country, he will issue gold-backed treasuries, and that it is my belief, she said, that we would see stable coins issued off of those treasuries, and all of it would be backed by treasuries. So it would create more demand for the treasury. Yeah. So that is to that point. And
that's what the tokenization is. And
even if it's not treasury backed, if it's USDC as an example, which is Goldman Sachs, if it's Tether, whatever it is, the feds will be controlling the on-ramp and the off-ramp. So while it's not as surveillance state perhaps as a CBDC, it would be every bit as governed, as regulated, and as surveilled as a CBDC, maybe just not with quite the same draconian privileges, if you will. So yeah, I think that it's very likely that you will see stable coins issued off of treasuries that are gold backed, would be my guess. That's what Judy said, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense, especially in looking at the amount of gold that's come in into the country since November, and we become net importers. So who's buying it all? Where's it going? And if you look at what Judy's saying, it makes a lot of sense. Instead of backing the currency with gold, which would be much more difficult, you can back the treasury market, because in reality, it's the treasuries that we need more than anything. We need people to finance our debt. And that's, the treasury market is supposedly the most stable, secure, liquid market on the planet. I would take exception with that these days, but nonetheless, it's been its image for many, 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 many years, and that now is waning. So you need to find a way to endure or to incite confidence, to instill confidence
Yes.
in the treasury market, and that would be the way to do it.
And I don't think anybody has any plans to pay off the debt. I do think there's plans to balance the budget to get out of a deficit. But to go pay off this debt is just it's not in the cards anymore. So to your point,
yeah, but that's only 37 trillion. What about the unfunded liabilities in Medicare and
yes,
Medicaid and Social
that's
Security?
why the gold got to come in, because otherwise we're going to continue to deprecate our value in the dollar. People aren't going to want to hold the treasuries. And Andy, what happens when we lower the interest rate, right? When the Fed eventually lowers the interest rate again, which will happen because we can't keep it high for very long. We keep showing that the country crashes every time we do that. When those rates,
what happened last time?
What
happened last time we lowered the short end of the curve? The 10-year said screw off and went higher. The Fed, unless they come in and implement yield curve control, which is monetization of debt, where they in essence create money to buy the 10-year treasury, that's what they're kind of doing. They just did that the other day, buying 10 and 30-year treasuries, and the Treasury Department's buying back their 10 and 30-year. But my things are going to die here in a minute. I'm going to have to talk on this. Let's hope it works. I just heard it go blue, blue, blue. But that's what's happening. Who wants to buy them? So if they lower just the front end of the curve, well, that doesn't do shit for the 10-year. And that's what's happened, because they will look and say, well, you're inflating, you're spending, you're not addressing the debt. The bigger problem, the big debt, your treasuries have been weaponized. Well, we don't want them, and we're going to sell them. And we would need a much higher rate of return to take those from you. So there will be a buyer of our debt. It just depends at what rate. So when they tried to lower the front end, the 10-year went up 100 basis points. It's not supposed to work that way. So yes, that would be the conventional wisdom, is that they should come in and lower rates. But what does that do to the longer end of the curve? My guess is would push it much higher.
I think so too. But to your point, you made it a minute ago too. I think eventually having gold backing those bonds is going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, we would hope.
We hope, right? Maybe it doesn't totally work the way we want it to, but it should be good. So I got one last question for you, Andy, because I know
brother.
Your deal is going to kind of die on us here, but I think this is one that everybody's kind of thinking about right now in their head. And I'm going to add just a little bit to this. People right now are looking at it. They're looking at the gold to silver ratio was about, I think it went up to 107 or so. It's now down to probably 91, 92, somewhere around there. You've got a lot of people that have held silver for decades, and they're just hoping it gets to 40 so they can sell out and be done with it. You've got other people looking right now going, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East, so oil's going to go up. So, is oil a good buy? And at the end of the day, where do you kind of see silver sitting among all these other options that are out there, including oil? And I don't know how closely you track the oil market. But I know that can also affect miners, gold and silver miners as well. If the price of oil goes skyrocketing up, it's going to hit their bottom line. However, if silver and gold keep going up, it may not be that negative of an effect. So.
Yeah, I have a feeling that oil will surprise people, and I don't think it's going to go straight to the moon because of this, unless something happens with the Straits of Hormuz or the U.S. gets dragged into something far broader that brings in other countries. the Straits of Hormuz controls 20% of the world's oil and, I don't know, 10-15% of the natural gas. You close that, you got big problems, but the problems would be far bigger for Europe and Japan, who rely almost entirely on oil coming from that region. Um, if this war ends sooner than, and I think it will, I really do. I think that they've been, I think Iran has lost the ability to really do much. They have very little ability to push back right now. You got a half a dozen, I don't know how many mobile missile launchers on trucks. That's it. Their ability to launch these missiles has been severely compromised. And so they have mobile launchers on trucks that the minute the Israeli Air Force sees it, they're gone. And how long is this going to happen? Look, the people in Iran are far more moderate and liberal. Even members of the of their Republican Guard are. It's just the ruling mullahs or whatever they're called that are the ones that are radical. And I think the people in Iran would like to see a regime change. Just the way that they are towards women. They executed, I don't know how many hundreds of people in one-day trials that they were like 2 minutes apiece, guilty, gone, dead. And I mean, they are a radical sect, but the people aren't so much that way. They are more progressive. I think we're close to seeing an end. I do. I've been following it very closely, and I don't really love to talk about war. It's too polarizing and whatnot, but I would just simply say I think we're closer to it being over than people think. Watch 2CTV and you tell me what you think. The dude's awesome. Anyways, I would say that silver has a better asymmetrical pattern, which means the lowest downside and highest upside. I think silver still oil still ultimately a good buy, but I'm not looking to see it break out the way things are right now. The only way it does is if something happens in the Straits or the US were really dragged into it, and then you see other countries get involved. God forbid, that's World War III. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But
Yeah.
I think if it were me, I think silver is the most undervalued asset on the planet. And again, seeing the largest delivery in the history of the COMEX market in silver happen in May should just be a very eye-opening event for people. They should look at that very closely. The people at that level who are taking in billions of dollars worth of silver, they don't do that just for shits and giggles. They believe that there is something big coming, and they've been right all along. Look at the gold imports and what the price of gold has done this year. So I would say the same thing will happen with silver.
I agree. I think a lot of what you're seeing in the news is just noise around things, and that's not.
Look what Jake Cusson Part, my brother, says, and he's right. He's really good. This guy, watch him. Everyone, watch 2CTV. He's an Iranian. He lives in. Never bet against the U.S. military. And thank you for your family service, Jake. I mean that. You don't bet against them, and I think that it's close to being over. I really do. And therefore, I think oil will fall. But gold and silver have been rising independent of anything that's been happening in the Middle East, and I think it's a different thing with gold and silver. So that's just my own personal take.
And I can't give you guys financial advice, but just a little bit of wisdom on trading. You make your money from following a strategy that you put in place well ahead of these kind of events happening. When you see these events happening, if you just try to jump in right now, you might get lucky, but there's a good chance that it doesn't go as long as you think. It doesn't go as high as you think, and you can get yourself burned. So just be careful with those things. Silver, we're still way below the all-time high of silver. Okay, it's like one of the only commodities that hasn't hit an all-time high in the last few years. And I think it's got its time now. I've been buying more silver than gold lately, but I'm also not selling my gold because it has a purpose. I'm just adding more silver right now. And frankly, I'm trying to do as much of that as I can, and I'm going much heavier in metals than I have in the past. And so, for me, it's definitely a welcome move as far as price goes. However, I would like to still be accumulating more at around $22. That's what I wish.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll ever get there.
If it went to 22, the premiums would be so high, it wouldn't be 22.
For sure.
And that's what typically happens, is that as the price gets driven down on paper, the premiums go the other way because there's a million people who are doing the same thing that you were doing.
I agree. And I just don't see a major correction. I mean, anything can happen, guys, right? There can be an everything crash, some kind of black swan event that happens that really strikes everything really hard. But you have to remember, gold rebounds the first. Okay. So if you do see something where gold and silver take a big dive, those are buying opportunities, not times to freak out and sell. And when you feel really nervous, like you need to sell things, that's when I think you need to have a good friend that's also a stacker or two, and just have a conversation with them. Come and watch and see what's going on in the market. Look at things. I'm not anticipating anything like that happening right now. If anything, I'm getting a little bit, I won't say FOMO, but I'm just feeling more wanting to pick up more silver. I'm like, okay, where else can I pull some other money to go do some other things? Because I do believe it's going to continue to have a good run here. So Andy, one of the other things I wanted to throw out here too is, and I've mentioned this before, when you're on too, is, just reaching out to Andy, guys. If you haven't done so already, I recommend setting up an account with Miles Franklin at the very least. And the reason
make sure they send us an email there to get our special pricing. It'll be better than almost anywhere in America, and we'll make sure that they get the best price and white glove service. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, so email Andy at info@milesfranklin.com. Let him know Stacking Surfer sent you. There's a little benefit for the channel that helps us keep the lights on and everything going. The other thing, though, that I really do recommend is I've used Andy several times. My dad has. I've got other friends that have done it, and we've had great experiences. If for some reason your email's not going through, or you have an issue or anything, send it again. You can send a note to me. I'm happy to get you in touch with Andy as well. The reality is we never know when there's going to be a time where you decide that you need to sell or to buy. Or you may want to play the gold to silver ratio, and having that account set up ahead of time makes it just a lot easier when you want to go do things, especially if it happens to be like on a Friday afternoon. You're trying to get things locked in or whatever else. And Andy's one of the few companies that I've heard of that will do a swap with you guys too. So, you can email them for the details of that to find out exactly how that works. If you go to a local coin store, they really don't have the ability to get you a great swap. Usually you've got to sell at a pretty low discount, I don't know, however that goes. And then you're going to be buying back at a higher premium, as if you were just selling and buying at the same time. So you got to look at things like that when you're out there doing that. And I'll tell you with the ratios, if you're going to play them, you got to play them fast. Sometimes people sit on there for 3 or 4 days, indecisive, and all of a sudden it goes from 104 down to 91, and you've lost a pretty substantial gain there, if that's what you're looking to do. So I'll throw that out. But Andy, I know you got to run today a little early, but I would love to follow up with you again. I'll reach out to you, see if when the next Tuesdays will work for you, and we'll get you on soon. And I guess
do it from my new studio next door. Yes. It's a wicked studio. It's so cool. Can't wait to show you all. And I have a big announcement that I am making on a week from tomorrow. Also, so lots of exciting stuff. But I love coming on your show, Jared. And I'm assuming next Tuesday will work. But please reach out, and you're one of the good guys, and I'm happy to help any way I can to your fantastic community. And thanks for having me on, brother. I do mean that sincerely.
That. Thanks, Andy. And
God bless. Hope to talk to you all soon.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.